Welcome, everyone. Welcome, agnostics, atheists, whatever you like to call yourselves, you are welcome here. We even had somebody write to us and tell us, if I understand correctly, that they are an atheist and spiritual. And whatever you like to call yourself, you are welcome here. We call ourselves an atheist church because there will never be anything supernatural talked about from the pulpit. So, sorry there was a little confusion about how I put things in on the meetup. The talk on the philosophy of Einstein, of Albert Einstein, has been rescheduled, and it's not for next week. It's sort of been moved further down. In fact, we're going to shift things around again because Stephen has said that he would like to give a talk next week, and I want to make space for him to do that. So, on Wednesday, September 30th at 7 o'clock at Benaroya Hall, there's going to be a debate between Skeptic Magazine's Michael Shermer and Larry Taunton. The topic is, do we need God? And if you want to go, the reason I'm mentioning it as one of the first things is please get your tickets now. We sent out a newsletter with a phone number that you can call. And the tickets are $15 a person. So Steve and I are definitely going. We got tickets. I don't know if anybody else has gotten tickets yet. So there's some people here who are going to be going. If you are going to be going, maybe you want to, if you want to meet up or anything like that, just let us know that you're going. On Saturday, September 26th, there's going to be a secular social, and that is going to be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So atheist drinking in the middle of the day at Brewers Cafe, spelled Brougwers, Brewers Cafe in Fremont. And our plan right now is to kind of, maybe we'll explore different bars last Sunday of the month, last Saturday of the month, yeah. So we are a church which is founded on scientific naturalism, secular ethics, and metacognition. And so I want to say how much I appreciated last week the fact that we dealt with somewhat controversial topics and were able to manage that. So I spent the last week thinking several times that there are places where I wish I had said to people, say more, I want to hear more about what you're thinking. And I think that certain sort of metacognition skills, this is the book that comes from the book Crucial Conversations, that we try to use some of the skills from in here because truth matters to this congregation. So things like defining our terms and using examples, but most importantly in the book Crucial Conversations is that the authors point out that you shouldn't expect to come to consensus. Maybe with a group of atheists you should never expect to come to consensus, but anyway, in any case, you shouldn't expect necessarily to come to consensus in one meeting. That just means that there's more to talk about. So I want to acknowledge us, because we have one or two options, right? One is we just pick bland conversations that won't offend anybody, in which case I don't think would be very intellectually stimulating for anybody. Okay, so last week I went to a wedding, and you've probably heard me talk about this wedding in group discussion. As I was anticipating going to it, I had a lot of trepidation. I counted. We have 5 ministers in this generation, well, including my aunt, but there are 5 ministers in my family. And so, and I wasn't out as an atheist to my family. So I was a little worried about what uncomfortable situation that might be. It turned out to be an awesome experience. And during the ceremony, I'm watching the ceremony, and it was a lot of reference to God and all of that. And I was thinking to myself, I was trying to imagine how, for example, Josh might do that ceremony, because Josh officiates at secular ceremonies. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that if you need an officiant for a wedding, for a funeral, whatever, I think we have several people here who actually can do that. but that's part of what a church community offers, and we all have that. We also have a physicist who's joined the group, and with regards to Greta Christina, is it Greta Christina who wrote, if you want a physicist to talk at your wedding?
No, I think it's somebody else. But
it's somebody else.
Sure.
So we actually now have a physicist in the group. And so anyway, so it did happen at the reception that I sat down next to a cousin of mine, that the last time I was with that cousin, we prayed together. You know, I remember standing, holding hands, bowing our heads in prayer and praying for our lives. And it turned out that, you know, the subject came up about the Seattle Atheist Church, and she was sitting right next to me. And everybody just sort of stopped, like mid-chew, you know. And I was waiting to, you know, get her reaction. And fortunately for me, what the reaction I got was people were curious. They were just like, how does that even work? What is that? You know, what does that mean? What do you do in an atheist church? And one of the things I realized is that we are still figuring out what we do in an atheist church and how we do an atheist church. And it's especially challenging because there's not a rule book and there's not a dogma like this is what we all agree to. But the only thing we agree to is that, you know, is our own free thought and autonomy to make our own decisions. So anyway, but it turned out well, and I realized that there are families and churches where when people think differently, they are actually shunned or excommunicated or whatever, and that's a really, really tragic thing, and I'm very grateful that that definitely did not happen to me. So today, what I wanted to talk to you about was this book by Walter Mischel, and one of the things that's interesting about the Marshmallow Marshmallow Test. People familiar with the Marshmallow Test? Okay, so for a lot of you who haven't seen it, there are videos on it, and the videos are so precious because he does experiments on preschool through like 6-year-old children. And the basic test is, he actually offered them a selection of goodies, but marshmallow was a favorite treat that people took, and Oreos and jelly beans and other things like that. But the child could take one marshmallow now and eat it as soon as they wanted to eat it, whenever they wanted to eat it, or they could wait until the researcher came back in the room and then they could get 2 marshmallows. And what they did was they secretly videotaped the children to see. What they were interested in is what enabled children to have delayed gratification. And so the kids on the video are observed saying things like, no, I mustn't. You know, they're talking to themselves, or, and of course, probably the parts of the video that people find most endearing are when the children cheat. And they do things like take the marshmallow and then dig a little hole and stick their tongue in there or whatever, and then, you know, put it back, or take the Oreos and lick the filling and then put it back, and then, you know, pretend that they've been not touching the treats. And so anyway, but what's interesting about Walter Mischel is he's really trying to follow good scientific process of recording, you know, what the hypothesis is and how they're doing the test. And they tracked these children all the way into their mid-40s. And they ran this test on so many different cohorts of children at all economic levels, everywhere from Los Angeles to New York, and to see what was the effect on the children. And eventually they even got a chance to do brain scans on adults and children to see what was happening as they tried to do the delaying strategies. So the children who were successful engaged in distraction. So they played with imaginary toys. They would sing songs to themselves. They would think fun thoughts, and sometimes they were coached, like, well, when, you know, go in and think fun thoughts instead of the marshmallow. I want you to think about a birthday party or whatever. They were thinking fun thoughts. They would physically turn their bodies away. So they would just turn away so that they're not looking at the marshmallow. And But of course, children who were told to think about the marshmallow, you know, they gobble the marshmallow up quite quickly. Another delaying strategy that worked for children was the covering up the treats. So taking the treats off the plate and then putting the plates over the top so they couldn't see them. Looking at a photo of the treats instead of having actual treats. And even distancing things like asking the children to imagine treats with a big gold frame around them. And all of these things help them. And then what they found out is that the ability to strategize about not eating the treats begins to emerge around age 6. So when the researchers would ask, how will you make it easier for yourself to not eat the treats, that the children, it wasn't until the age of 6. At 5 they might come up with strategies, but the strategies actually weren't good strategies. I'm going to stare at it. Well, that doesn't work. It actually makes you eat it. But things like they start talking to themselves, I will not ring the bell. I will get 2 treats when she comes back if I do not ring the bell. So especially around 6, they learn to really think at a higher level about the future. And Walter Mischel calls them hot thoughts versus cool thoughts. And hot thoughts focus on the pleasurable sensations that one would get in doing the action. So if children are sitting there thinking about how chewy, gooey, sweet, melting on their tongue, or whatever the marshmallow is going to be, then actually they're going to eat that marshmallow pretty quickly. But when they are thinking cooling thoughts, such as, it's shaped like a cube, to kind of abstract it away. It's puffy like a cotton ball. Or even cockroaches might have been licking this marshmallow. That those are all strategies for not eating the marshmallow. And the takeaway is that if you face temptation, you're looking over your fence, because in our house we're up higher on our porch than we can look down into the neighbor's yards. If you're up on your porch and you can look down into the neighbor's yards and the ladies over there are wearing bikinis, or you have a man over there wearing a Speedo, it's very important to quickly focus on a cooling thought like, look at all that dog poo. So another experiment that they did was called the clown box, and the clown box was a box with had a speaker inside and a face of a clown painted on it. And then on either side they had these glass boxes with toys on rotating turntables. And then the clown voice is saying to the children, come and play with me. Look at these airplanes. We could have so much fun. And the children, they're trying to tempt the children. And in this experiment, the children were given if-then statements. And what they found is that if you have if-then statements worked out ahead of time, if the clown talks to me, then I will do. And it really almost didn't matter what. The kids could come up with their own thing. Then I will shout, no, no! Or, then I will turn my back on it. Or then I will, sing a song or whatever. That the if-then statements work really well. And so it's another technique that we could do. Think of temptations we have in our life that are going to come up, and then create an if-then plan. So, yes?
I'm actually terrified of clowns. So
Yes.
I would not walk on them.
Yes, a lot of people are terrified of clowns, I think. Yeah. And so then another thing that they look at is this delayability. Delayability has a protective effect later on in life. There's something called rejection sensitivity, and the way they test for it is they ask questions about people's anticipation of abandonment. I feel that people I love will always leave, or different sentences where you rate yourself to tell how much you have a fear of rejection or abandonment. And that when you have rejection sensitivity and you don't have good delay, then people do kind of crazy, I would call ineffective strategies. So, and if you have, and that's another situation where the high, the if-then can work. So, teenagers in particular, they did this in middle schools in the Bronx, and there are children who become very sensitive to social rejection. And it might be, it might be childhood causes, it might be just currently whatever reason. The ability to keep from blowing it out of control when you interpret a rejection message. And the idea is that somebody who's really highly sensitive to rejection starts seeing it everywhere, right? A kid doesn't recognize you in school, you feel really rejected, as opposed to just like, hey, it's me, remember, someone disagreed with me, I feel rejected. If someone forgot to invite me somewhere, I interpret it as, a big rejection. And so they teach these students the skill of delay. So first of all, instead of reacting immediately, if this happens, then I will journal, or then I will go talk to a teacher, or then I will wait till the end of the day and then talk to the person. And so working with kids like that, they actually were able to prevent some, children reported that they felt higher, they felt better than not. And then another thing that they did, and this is kind of my last example, was that they looked at, so they're tracking these kids through over the years and seeing if you have a ability to delay, what does it mean in terms of your later on in life. And they looked at people who, they were looking at how people make financial decisions about the future. And one of the things that they did was they asked people to imagine your life today and your life in the future, and then to see how similar those two people are. And they had a chart with, the circles are very far apart, the circles are closer, the circles are touching, the circles are practically overlapping. And if you see yourself as the person you are today is the same person that you're going to be, then you make much better choices about the future. And the other thing that they did is they played games where there are avatars. And so the avatar either looks like you today or the avatar looks older. And if you're using an avatar of yourself with your face aged, you're more likely to make good choices about the future. Because you're relating that will be you. So the delayed gratification now to have something later. And I was interesting to me because my kids play Sims Life. And so I don't know, they have elderly people, but the idea of you yourself aging and then decisions you make affecting you when you're aged, there could be something interesting there in the future. But anyway, I thought that this was a really interesting book for two reasons. First, I think the topic is interesting, and I'll send out the link to the video that goes with it. I should have thought to do that before. But the other thing that's really cool is this is psychology, but it is as scientific as it can get. And I think the fact that today we can even bring in the brain scan. When they run in the brain scan, by the way, totally different sections of the brain light up. If you're thinking hot thoughts or you're thinking cooling thoughts. And so, and that of course kids can be taught to think cooling thoughts. And perhaps conversely you could be taught to think hot thoughts when that serves you, right? If we find more examples of stuff that is like well-researched and all that stuff, please share it with us so we can talk about it. And I will close as I like to do. Atheists believe in good because good works in non-mysterious ways. Thank you.